tired of endless flashcards? You frustrated at forgetting certain processes? Are you pulling your hair out at wondering why mark schemes do things a certain way in their answers? Well, the Feynman Method might be exactly what you need to help yourself study and, again, never forget anything anymore. The Feynman Method was named after Richard Feynman, who is one of the finest physicists in all of history. He had a real strong knack for explaining science, really complicated physics, in simple terms so that anyone could understand it, and as a result he got interviewed a lot and really drummed up a lot of enthusiasm for future scientists. In fact, one of his most important contributions to physics is something called the Feynman diagram, which I've got on screen now for you. It is a way of explaining something which sounds super complicated. It's a way of explaining quantum electrodynamics, where it is interactions between particles and quarks and that kind of thing. However, look how simple that diagram looks. And honestly, it really is as simple as that. When I was doing physics at university, I was thanking Richard Feynman every day because the complicated maths that is summarized by that diagram is truly mind-blowing. And he, along with Albert Einstein, both believe that if you can't explain something simply enough, you don't understand it well enough. So that was a quote by Albert Einstein. Richard Feynman said, if you can't explain it to a first-year university student, then you don't understand it well enough. Simply put, these two amazing physicists who understood really complicated things both agree that if you cannot explain something simply, it means you do not understand it, if you can't explain it in your own words. So this is actually the fundamental process behind the Feynman method for studying. So here's how it works. First thing you're going to do is you're going to pick a topic. And what you're going to do is you're going to study that topic. You're going to read about it, you're going to learn about it, you're going to use all the techniques that I used in the previous video in order to be able to study the topic. So again, you're going to study it. The second step is where it gets a bit more interesting. What you're going to do is you're going to, ideally by writing, you're going to explain the topic in your own words. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean that you're going to explain it as if your parents or your younger siblings or someone in year 7, 8 or 9 can understand what you're talking about. When you read the definition or whatever paragraph that you've just read, you're going to explain it in your own words simply. So you're going to get rid of all of the fancy technical jargon. You're just going to write it in your own ways. If you need to use an analogy, perfect. I want you to imagine that you are teaching a lesson on what you've just learned. Now, what this is going to get you to do is it's going to get you to self-evaluate your own learning. Because if you realise when you're explaining it, you think, okay, this is a bit waffly, or this doesn't really make sense, or I wonder why this is the case. Anything like that, what you're going to then do is you're going to go back and you're going to answer, you're going to re-study the bits that you were not sure about. So, for example, if when you're imagining yourself teaching a class this topic, you think, hang on, they'll probably ask me this, I don't know how to answer it, that's what you're going to study. If you realise that your definition or your explanation was a bit wonky, is a bit, a bit long-winded, the analogy doesn't make much sense, you're going to re-study. And then what you're going to do again is you're going to re-explain what you've just done. So you're going to go back up here to re-explain it. And you're going to do this again and again and again until you have, let's say, a page of notes condensed down into a paragraph, which is very simple, it's clear, and it's easy to understand. The reason why this is simple, and again, this works for literally any subject. You could do it with the topic of inflation in economics, you could do it with the topic of integration in mathematics, you could do it with any physics, biology, or chemistry topic. You can do this with any topic you like. Now, why is this so important? Well, generally speaking, probably the worst question a teacher's ever asked you is, do you understand that? The reason for this, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that you don't really know if you understand something. And I don't really know if I understand something. Right, if I read something, I'll go, okay, yeah, I read those words, I know what those words mean, cool. That doesn't mean I've actually understood it. What it means is, I know what the words are, which isn't the same as understanding a process. Now, how can you trick people into actually seeing if they understand it? You don't say, well, what does this mean? You say, in your own words, I'm going to give you the definition, I'm going to give you the answer. In your own words, I want you to try and re-answer it. I want you to write down what this means. So let's say I explain to you what inflation means in economics. And I then said, okay, that's my definition. I want you to word it in your own words. You can come up with analogies, you can come up with similes, metaphors, whatever you want. If you're able to do that, it means you actually understand it. If you're unable to do it, you do not understand it well enough. And that's what you need to do to yourself when you're studying. You don't just need to go, okay, I've memorized the definition of integration, or I've memorized the formula for this, I've memorized whatever. Instead, you have to say, okay, if I had to explain in my own words, how would it work? If I asked you to explain what integration actually is in your own words, could you do it? If I asked you to explain what thermodynamics is, would you know how to do it in your own words? It's not thinking, oh, I can't remember the definition, I can't remember what I read in the book. It's what's your understanding of it. And that's the real key thing that a lot of people miss. If you are able to pick a topic and explain it and teach it to someone else, that will boost your understanding, and it will make you remember it more likely, because when you understand something, you're far more likely to actually remember it. As an example, I've got 2 sentences on the screen right now. I want you to tell me which one is easier for you to remember. So the top one was in English, the second one is in Portuguese. Now, unless you speak Portuguese, there is no way in hell you'd remember that as easy as you'd remember the top one. Why? Because you don't understand it. And I know that may seem like an extreme example, but realistically speaking, if you're memorizing definitions or passages from a book, you don't understand them, you're just trying to memorize them, and the words don't actually mean anything to you. It's as if they're in another language. So, again, it's all about understanding. In fact, there's a kind of a famous saying, and no one really knows who said it first, but teaching is the art of learning a second time. So when you teach something, when you imagine yourself teaching someone something, you actually look at it from a different perspective, and it actually helps you learn again. My ability at maths and physics got far better when I started teaching it. So I was already, I'm at university, I've done my master's degree and everything. However, teaching it again, teaching it to someone that doesn't know, that is where I really gained a fine understanding of maths and of physics and of the other subjects I've tutored as well. So you have to really keep that in mind. So just as a final kind of point as to why this is so useful, what it forces you to do is to take your complicated topics, and a lot of you are learning some pretty difficult stuff, to then break it down into its fundamental pieces. This is another thing that Elon Musk does as well, where he takes really complicated topics and he breaks them into their really fundamentals. You can break anything down more and more and more until it's just basic topics. So for example, everything in maths is actually just adding or subtracting 1 if you break it down enough. Then it forces you to explain it. Explaining something is far harder than reading it. So that forces you to then do something active, which again links back to the previous video, the 3 things I told you to do to make sure you learn better. It's very active. You're having to reword it, your brain's really trying to think of a way to explain that topic. Then it forces you to identify your weak points. What bit did you not understand well enough? Well, then you can restudy. How efficient is that? You're not studying the whole topic again, you're studying only the few bits, and it will be a few, it won't be the whole thing, the few bits that you didn't understand. Therefore, it's really targeted, it's really precise, you spend less time studying. Then it forces you to re-explain it. That's the end goal, is being able to explain something in simple terms. A really good way to test this is obviously to try and explain it to your parents, siblings, friends, whatever. If you're still at school, you can explain it to your teachers. Say, oh, I tried to learn this. Can I explain it in my own words, and does it make sense? And then they'll be able to also point out anything you may need to restudy to make sure you understand. So all in all, it is an amazing strategy. If any of you are going to university or in university right now, you know that the amount of stuff you need to learn is colossal. If you're doing engineering, business, economics, whatever you're doing, the amount you have to learn is too much. Even if you study 8 hours a day, you need to be efficient. It's not good enough to just spend a lot of time doing it. You need to do it efficiently. And that's the only way that you can really learn big quantities of stuff, of content, in a short period of time. It's all about the efficiency. So I hope that you will go out and try this method now with whatever topic you want to do, and then you can let me know how it goes in the comments. I'm really interested to see how well it works for you, and in other subjects as well, or other topics. But without further ado, I'll leave you to it. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.